Good morning, everyone. I'm reminded of the IPL final of last year. I don't know how many of you remember the match. It was unique in a couple of ways. One, of course, is that Mumbai Indians beat CSK by 1 run in a very riveting and interesting match. But it was also unique for one other reason, which is that for the first time in the history of viewership of sport in India, nearly 2 crore customers viewed that match live through internet through an app which is Hotstar app. Internet, digitalization, technology has tremendously changed the way we consume sport, entertainment, and we deal with business day to day. I'm sure a lot of us today appreciate the fact that in the last 1.5 years, 2 years, the way we consume any form of entertainment has completely moved to on-the-go devices such as tabs and mobile phones. With that context, I'd like to talk about how technology is enabling distribution and how does it impact the future of distribution. Before I launch into that, since we are at the cusp of the next decade, I want to quickly talk about what has happened in the last decade, what kind of changes have been brought together through a confluence of factors to the mutual fund industry. Of course, Mutual Fund Sahi Hai campaign is in many ways symbolic of the spirit of optimism and dynamism that the industry offers. It very quickly made sure that mutual funds was a household and a familiar term across India. If you look at the last 10 years, Indian mutual fund industry has seen tremendous growth. We moved from about 6 lakh crores of AUM in 2000 all the way to 27 lakh crores of AUM in just about 10 years, and that was at a CAGR of 15% for the first 5 years and 19% in the next 5 years. The position of India in the world mutual fund industry ranking also moved from 18 to 16, despite the fact that the world mutual fund industry itself grew at a very healthy rate of 8% CAGR. So that growth, in terms of further numbers, you can clearly see industry gross sales in the last 5 years went up nearly doubled, new SIP registrations went up thrice, and the number of transactions moved by nearly 3 times. And these transactions, my friends, is not including the SIP triggers, which would anyway inflate this number significantly more. What has happened in the last 10 years? The real key growth is in what is called as retailization of our industry, which means that individual investors were brought into this industry by people like you in significant numbers over the last 10 years. And that has resulted in the AUM of individual investors moving from 3 lakh crore rupees to nearly 15 lakh crores, and the individual investor AUM as a percentage has become 55% of the industry. We've also successfully made sure that nearly 2 crore unique investors today are invested in our industry. But the most important thing and the most interesting trend is really what's coming up in this slide. What we've tried to do is map the market share of different constituents of the mutual fund intermediation in the industry across 3 years, 2010, 2015 and 2019. And what you will notice is that despite the fact that we've had massive changes to the way intermediation is looked upon in the industry, the market share of IFAs or MFDs, as we are supposed to call them now, MFDs, has remained more or less constant. I think it's a testimony to the tremendous resilience and service orientation that IFAs and MF distributors bring to the market, that despite the AUM growing all the way to 26 lakh crores, the market share has more or less remained at 24%. And despite all the changes that came in the form of direct, RIAs and all kinds of changes, it still continues to be at a very healthy 23% today. This one is an interesting slide which points to the trends in the digital space today. Just about 5 years back, if you looked at 100 transactions that came into our industry, 65 of those came through paper. And today, just 5 years later, only 27 of 100 transactions come through paper. The rest of it is coming through digital or electronic means, which means through channels, exchanges, or the digital websites of the AMCs or the RTAs. But and this in the backdrop of a tremendous increase in the number of transactions, as you can see on the left side. 14 million transactions in 2015. In 2019, it crept up to 40 million transactions. The right side of the slide also shows an interesting trend. There has been varying levels of adoption of digital and electronic medium by different constituents in the industry. I'll focus on MF distributors or MFDs. 5 years back, 80 of the 100 transactions were coming through paper. And today, we have only 38 coming through paper. So, given these trends, so we've had great growth, we've had a lot of retail investors come in, IFAs or mutual fund distributors have managed to retain their market share in the face of a lot of changes in the industry. Technology adoption has been pretty neat. So the question is, why does your business need even more technology? Have we kind of reached the pinnacle of what we can do with technology? If we look at just a trend in terms of the number of transactions and the number of SIPs registered, just in the last 5 years, MFDs managed to get double the number of transactions from 2015 to 2019. That kind of scale cannot be handled till you leverage technology to build your scale. And then we tried to look at the number of investors that were brought in the last couple of years, which means just calendar 18 and calendar 19. More than 25% of the new investors to the industry came through IFAs or mutual fund distributors. But that's not the interesting fact. The interesting fact is, if you look at the kind of investors who came in, nearly 57% came from T30, where naturally urban investors would be interested in digitalized services. 59% were SIPs, which means that you would need to continue to service those customers for the foreseeable future. But also very interestingly, 50% of the new investors who came in through the IFAs are millennials. They are less than 35 years of age, which means that they are digitally savvy. Many of them are digitally native and would expect digital technology-based services from their distributors. Unfortunately, 74% of these investors made their first investments through paper. It's an uncomfortable fact. It is not a scalable model, as all of us now realize. There are cost implications. It limits your time being spent on engaging with investors, and you end up spending a lot of time in moving the paper, getting the signatures, and then pushing the paper to the RTAs and the AMCs. So this is something that we need to work on. Of course, the fact of the matter is that with Aadhaar eKYC potentially coming in the near future, some of these problems will get significantly resolved. So why are we saying you need to continue to look at technology while sourcing has largely moved to digital and electronic? 27% still comes through paper, and 27% of 40 million transactions is a very large number that still comes through paper. So all of you, the IFDs and the IFAs and the MFDs, need to look at investor lifecycle management, starting from prospecting an investor to initiating KYC, to managing the transaction, to growing the business, to administrative activities that are involved in reconciling your revenues and looking at your top 10 investors and analyzing all of that. You need to look at leveraging technology. Technology will help you build scale, reduce your cost, will give you the time that you need to invest in the kind of activities that the speakers before me spoke about, which is invest in creating your own brand, spend time analyzing stuff that needs to be conveyed to the investor, engage with the investors. That's where your time needs to go today. A lot of that time still goes in handling transactions. Are there tools available in the market? So let's say you've decided that you want to leverage technology. There are a plethora of solutions that have been provided by AMCs and RTAs today to cater to every need of the IFA segment. Right from customer onboarding using what we call now as paperless KYC, because Aadhaar based eKYC is still not launched again. There are on-demand data services. There is a tremendous amount of reports available through mailback services from the RTAs. There are chatbots available on most websites of AMCs as well as on CAM's website, which can help investors deal with some of their basic queries like what has happened to my transaction. I had given an NFT transaction 1 week back. What is the status of that particular transaction? All of those can be self-serviced by just leveraging the chatbots that are available. And then there are a number of distributor portals and mobile apps available for usage by the distributors. As I mentioned, and I'll spend half a minute on this, mailback services is a great tool available for all the IFAs. Most of the transaction data, we have more than 50 reports that actually enable you to look at various aspects of your business, right from which customer doesn't have KYC today to what is my revenue, what is my clawback, what is my trail fee, what kind of transactions have got accepted, what have got rejected. There are more than 50 reports available. They're available for free. It's a simple registration process. Unfortunately, even today, nearly 10 to 15% of the IFA community registered to leverage these tremendously useful on-demand data services. Like I mentioned, there are more than 50 mailback reports available. I'd urge those of you who are not registered to go and check out these reports. There is paperless KYC solution available, which you can use for hassle-free onboarding of the investors. Many of you are perhaps not aware that when you use this process, the moment you click the button and say submit, KYC will start showing as work in progress, which means that you can continue with a transaction for the investor, which is a tremendous benefit if you use the paperless KYC process. And then there are a plethora of platforms provided by each of the AMCs as well as by RTAs to service every need of yours in the investor lifecycle. Let me just spend a minute on this. CAMS has H360, which is a next generation platform, which allows you to do prospecting, which means you can send emails to prospective investors. You can get KYC done, paperless KYC done, get transactions completed, review your brokerage, look at AUM, look at portfolios, look at reports, look at, in the future, you will be able to raise customer service queries on behalf of customers for simple queries that the investors may have. So, in summary, there is a lot of option available for leverage of technology even in the current context. And the AMCs and RTAs and others are continuously evolving technology to ensure that your needs are met in a digitalized manner so that you free up your time to service your investors, to engage with them and to chase after growing your business rather than getting involved with business operations and administrative activities. In summary, I'd like to leave one thought with you. Just 2-3 days back, Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft, was here and he had a couple of things to talk about. One, he mentioned that by 2030, there would be nearly 50 billion devices connected. We've all seen the power of smartphones. We've witnessed the rapid changes that they have made just in the last 5 years in India. Just imagine 50 billion connected devices. That means on an average, 7 devices connected to the internet per human being in 10 years time frame. He also mentioned that technology is to be seen as an enabler and a and a human effort multiplier, human service multiplier, which means that there is a multiplier effect of using technology. You are able to scale, you are able to reduce cost quite significantly leveraging technology, and it therefore helps you to unleash your creativity and your ability to strategically service your customers. With that, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Srikanth.